Well, hey, let's jump on here for a few minutes. Welcome. Um, if you're joining us here live or on the recording, excited to have you here with us today. We're actually broadcasting this to our Elementum page, which normally we do these Friday conversations in our private group for ministry leaders, but we thought, and what a huge opportunity in the conversation that we're going to have today. So wanted to make sure that we got it out a little bit broader. So welcome, whether you're in our group, on our page, if you're seeing the recording of this at some point, welcome. So I'm here with Steve York. Steve, how you doing today?
Hello, good, thank you.
Good, good. Excited to have Steve here. Steve and I have known each other for several years now. He's a part of our Elementum team. And and he has a pretty specific role that he's a part of. And so this is a huge conversation to jump into today. So, hey, Steve, why don't you introduce yourself real quick and just kind of let us know a little bit who you are and kind of where you're living, what you're doing, and then we'll set up the topic and jump right into it.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So my name's Steve York, and I now live in Placerville, California, which is up in the foothills from Sacramento. And I'm married. My wife's name is Janelle, and we have two kids, college students. Josiah is 20 years old, and Olivia is 18 years old. And I grew up in the Bay Area, in the Moraga, which is a small town in the East San Francisco Bay Area, over the hills from Berkeley. Went to school at UC Santa Barbara, and really came alive to my faith when I was there at UCSB. And then took a job as a youth pastor a year or so after college, and went to seminary while I was a youth pastor in Michigan, and both of my kids were born in Michigan. And then we moved back to California. I took a job as a youth pastor, associate pastor in the Central Valley in Merced. And it was during that time that another pastor moved to Merced to start campus ministry at the University of California, Merced, which was a new campus at the time, and also Merced College. And that launched me into college ministry. So part of that process was realizing how much of a need there is on community colleges. And so I started to reach out to other pastors and leaders around California to see what they were doing to reach the community college, and starting to partner with other leaders. One of those guys introduced me to Andy and Elementum, and so fast forward a few years, I'm on Elementum staff now, focusing on stage 0, which is basically helping churches to start a college ministry from scratch, or starting to reach a nearby campus from scratch.
Yeah, it's been fun. You know, Steve has definitely brought a certain dynamic and passion to our team, and it's always fun to be a part of. So, hey, so that's part of the conversation that we want to jump into today is reaching college students on campus, right? And here's why I think the conversation is so important. Whether it's, you know, Steve, people that you're talking to that are churches who want to start something, but I think also the tendency out there is with churches is let's just start a Bible study, right? Let's just start something. We'll start a small group. And it never really has any intentionality or engagement towards a college campus where there's an obvious mission field and opportunity. And so I think one of the things that I love about you is both, you know, helping churches start from scratch, but also understanding even existing churches of how that they can begin to reach and engage college students, which I think is so important. So let's start here with the conversation. Why
Yeah,
do you think that engaging a campus is so important?
yeah. I think one of the reasons is just that that's where the lost students are, and there's just a ripe harvest. And students on the college campus they're at a time in their lives when they're just trying to answer the big questions about why am I here, what's life about, what am I investing my life in. So they're making big decisions, and they're unusually open to the gospel and to spiritual conversations. So that's the first reason, is that they're there, and there's a ripe harvest. Another thing is that just how essential disciple making is to our own church students, and looking at my involvement in campus ministries, especially that first one in Merced and the college ministry. My high school youth group kids that had just graduated they were going to fizzle and die spiritually because there was no outlet to
Mm.
live out their faith. And the college campus is an amazing opportunity to teach your students, your disciples, how to share their faith and how to
Yeah.
multiply their lives. So
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Yeah.
And so just the opportunity to train students in sharing their faith and reaching out, and that's when they come alive to their faith.
Yeah. That's so
And so,
good. I think
yeah.
about like just I mean, there's not too many opportunities we have where a mission field is congregating together in a specific area,
Mm,
just
yeah.
like, hey, we could actually go to a campus. And I think, in a lot of ways, I think there's a huge untapped potential for churches and leaders that they don't even realize, right? When they're
Mm,
intentionally neglecting a college campus in their city, of saying that's a part of the dynamics of the community. And what a rare opportunity where all of these college students, this demographic, is to come together for hours every single day, be on community together, eat together, learn together, all these different things. And there it is for you, and just missing out on that opportunity. But here's the deal: is there's hurdles, as you begin to think about engaging a campus. So what are some of those hurdles that you see sometimes in leaders working
yeah.
with leaders in engaging a college campus?
Yeah. So there are several that I think are kind of the key ones. First is time. And a part of that obviously is just is priorities, but we're leaders are busy. Church leaders are busy, and there's just the sense of like I don't have the time to get on campus,
Mm.
and so that's the first one. Another one is just how do I do it? When you're talking about investing time in something, you probably don't want to invest time in something that you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so we just don't do it because we don't know what to do. We don't want to waste our time, and so we just never step out. And so that is key, is just having a simple process, knowing what you're doing, knowing what your purpose is on campus, having and not just having a way to do it, but having a really effective way to
yeah.
be on campus and make the most of your time on campus. And so when I think of that how-to, it's just it's how to discover spiritual interest on campus and how to follow up with interested students. So those two things are key. And I think we'll probably talk about that a little bit more later. But another one is just the fear of failure,
Yeah.
and just to feel like I don't want to get on campus and have lousy conversations or feel like I'm getting in people's faces, or we want, and we hear of or see the preacher on a bench or something, and it's
Hmm.
like I don't want to do that, so we don't think we can do anything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so good. You think about just the opportunities that we have and some of those hurdles that we experience, and a lot of them are what I would say are internal things, that are
Mhm.
preventing us. And what I love about you, and just part of your process, and we'll get into this maybe in a few minutes, is that you're willing to kind of show them how easy it is, right? There's a lot of things out there, like you could hand them here's a book, read this book, watch this video, do this. But there's also this sense of, hey, and that's what I love about you. Hey, let me show you, right? Let's just go do it together. And I remember even when we
Yeah.
went on that campus together in California, just how easy that is, to jump into some of those things. So how about, let's say you have a leader that comes to you, and, you lay some of these simple processes out. Like how do you help them get over some of these hurdles that internally that they may be experiencing to engage on the college campus?
Yeah, I think the main one you just mentioned is just saying, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to come and do it with you.
Mm.
And I think that's the key. And it's kind of like, that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
He called his 12 disciples. He's not like, okay, here's a booklet, go live this out, see you later. Like he's like, come do life with me. And so Jesus is our model, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's one of the things I think of, is just doing it with leaders. But here's a few other things. One is to start small,
Mm.
and like time is a key issue, and so start small. Just have 2 hours a week where you are committed to being on campus. Another one is just having a simple, loving, and respectful process to find out where where students are at spiritually. And that's what I love doing, is showing a few very simple ways to discover spiritual interests and then follow up with interested students. And the cool thing too, I love our whole team at Elementum. We're committed to taking leaders through the whole process, like from starting from scratch, and then like we've got stuff built out for years to come to help
years
leaders.
and years.
Yeah. So it's like that's another thing I think of, is like we're in for the long haul. We're not just here to pass off a tool and then say see you later, good luck.
Yeah, because we definitely understand in the midst of this is like there's initial things, but then you have to begin to build some systems out, some things out in order to kind of build, you've started with that foundation, but how do you continue to build that foundation where if a leader leaves or something transitions, that there's the continued ministry. And that's the beauty, I think, of all of our different parts in our process, is they're just saturated with discipleship, right? How do you invest your lives into other people so that if God calls them out of your ministry, that they're equipped and prepared as they go into the next season? Maybe he calls you into a new season, right? And if you step out, then there's somebody else who can step into that process and begin to do it. That's what I love about it. So here let's get into kind of the process a little bit, right? So potentially people live here, as well as maybe people who are watching the replay. Let's talk a little bit about that process. So if you're a pastor, a leader listening, maybe what's the first step? And then maybe even you can kind of build out even after that, what are some of the things that you would do kind of following that?
Yeah. So in my mind, I just say the first step is let's talk. Like, let's get a phone call or a Zoom call or something. And I want to hear where your ministry's at and what your heart is for the campus, what campus is near you, all that stuff, just to get to know you. So that would be my first thing, is let's talk. Another thing is we produced a PDF a while back, a couple months ago, titled "How to Start a College Ministry from Scratch," and it could also be titled "How to Reach a Campus Next to You from Scratch." And so that would be another thing to do, is to take a look at that and see if that intrigues you. If you're like, wow, these 4 steps, that's what we need. That might be the next step for you. And then you'd say, okay, I need to talk with Steve.
Yeah. It's good.
And another thing I think of is just deciding to do it. Just saying, like, yes, there's a ripe harvest in the campus right near us, and I don't know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't know how to do it, but I know I've got a few hours a week that I want to make it happen. So just saying, I'm going to do it.
That's cool. Okay, so let's say they get to that point, right? They call you. They're okay. Let's do this, Steve. Why don't you give them maybe a kind of a quick overview of what kind of things that you do, as to just kind of progress forward. What would be the pathway forward that you have used over and over again that we use, that you would recommend to them?
Yeah. So we have a stage 0 intro series, and it's basically 4 Zoom calls that I do with a leader, and it's about a half hour each time. And the outline is basically the same as the PDF. And the first one is discovering spiritual interest on campus. And so it's basically, I just show you some simple ways and lead you through a simple way to engage with students and have great spiritual conversations on campus. It's basically setting up a table, and it's amazing. It's so amazing how many, just how you set up a table with these picture cards, and students just flock to the table, and you get to lead students through this survey using pictures, and you get to know them. And then that naturally leads to spiritual conversations, which naturally leads to like an invitation to follow up. And that's the next step. So the first one is discovering spiritual interest. The second Zoom call is all about following up or beginning to disciple students. And there's basically 2 steps to that. It's either sharing the gospel and or teaching them how to do a one thing study, which is like a 2-minute Bible study tool.
Mm.
that's just amazing. On campus, it's just a great way to begin connecting with a student around God's word. And then the third one is, so first we got discovering spiritual interest on campus. Next is simple disciple making. And the third one is gathering community. I'm just talking about how to begin to build community on campus centered on Christ. And then the last one is developing leaders. And so that's the outline. And it's the outline in PDF. If you want to take a look at that, and you'll see more of that. And then that's the outline that we do for the Zoom calls.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. Yeah, I love it, because as we kind of put that in front of people, it's one of those things of like, wow, I can do that, like that, and even what I said before is I love that you're willing to kind of go and show them exactly what that looks like. That's awesome. So let's do this. What are, give us a couple stories, right? A couple stories of people that you've experienced, and people who've gone through this process with you, where they're at now, what they're doing, what God's been doing through them. I'd love to hear some of those stories.
Yeah. So first I'll tell you about a retired lady named Carol. And so Carol's in Santa Maria, California. And I used to live on the Central Coast in the San Luis Obispo area, so which is about half hour north on the coast from Santa Maria. And there's a campus in Santa Maria, Hancock College, community college. And I was starting a movement there, a disciple making movement at the college there. And the first thing I did was connect with some local churches, and I met a college pastor there who said, hey, come to our college group. So I went there. There's also a lady, Carol, retired lady Carol, who he invited. And I met her there, and we started talking, and I was telling her what I do on campus, and she goes, I would love to come. And so she came once. I just said, just come once and come hang out with me and kind of watch. And so we had the table set up and did the picture survey, and she loved it. She got to share the gospel with a few students, and so she came back the next week, and then the next week, and the next week, and after like a month or so, we had a few students that we were discipling on campus, and Carol was like, I just love using my home for stuff. Can we invite them over for dinner? So I'm like, yeah, sure. So
no, you can't. No, you can't. No, you're not allowed to invite people over for dinner.
Yeah. So we invited. There were like maybe 3 or 4 students that we were doing Bible study with on campus and discipling, and hey, you guys want to do just come to dinner at Carol's house? And they were like, oh yeah, totally, we're all over it. And so we did a meal, and I love apologetics and theology, and so I just prepared a little discussion on apologetics, and we had a great meal at Carol's house. And after the evening, we're like, do you guys want to do this again sometime? And they're like, yeah, next week. And so that began our weekly Friday meeting. And so it's so funny, because the next week we had like 5 students there. The next Friday there were like 7. And then every time they just love being together. And so they just invite more and more of their friends. Meanwhile, we're on campus every single week, just once a week for 2 hours. And Carol is out there doing the spiritual survey and connecting with students, sharing the gospel. And so the cool thing is that for family reasons, we had to move out of town. And so we moved to Placerville, which is like 5.5 hours away. And Carol continues to go on campus every week. And I won't tell you more about them, but then there's a couple, Jim and Kathy, who Carol knows. They're a retired couple who live a half hour away from Carol in Lompoc, which has a satellite campus, small, tiny satellite campus of Hancock College. And so Jim and Kathy are doing the same thing there in Lompoc. And so Carol's my hero. And so the cool thing I think is that how many retired folks, we don't realize as in our churches, the impact that retired folks, like they have time, they have so much experience to pour into college students. And so I'm convinced that there are Carols and Jim and Kathys in every single church. And they just need to experience how simple and fruitful it is to make disciples on college campuses.
That's awesome. How about a story? You have any stories in terms of like maybe somebody on staff at a church? I got
a handful, but I'll tell you about a guy I met in Bakersfield. So his name's Kyle. He was a college pastor, youth pastor in Bakersfield, and I connected with him regarding Bakersfield College, community college. About 20,000 students attend, and he had a college group of probably about 50 or 70, college students coming to his church meeting. They had like kind of like a typical, church large group gathering they do once a week for worship and all. And so I went down there to Bakersfield and took him and a few of his key student leaders on campus to set up our table and do some evangelism, to discover spiritual interest on campus, and then following up with students. And they loved it. And so they started doing that every single week. And so I went on campus with them a few times. I would come down and join them, but just seeing them continue every single week, week after week, and seeing how wonderful that was for Kyle and his students to experience their fruitfulness on campus and see them develop new relationships and stuff. One other story. There's a guy, a youth pastor I connected with in Monterey. His name was Tyler. And I went down there and had lunch with him. I drove like 5 hours to have lunch with him. We had Chipotle. It was really good. And then I was just showing him the solarium and showing him, how to connect with students on campus and discover spiritual interests. And he's like, I want to do it. And I'm just like, well, when can we do it? And he goes, let's do it right now. So we went over to campus right then. And just started sharing the gospel, doing our spiritual survey with students and sharing the gospel with students. And Tyler, we did it for like an hour and a half. And then at one point, Tyler looks at me and he goes like, okay, I've got it. I'm good. And I'm like,
you can go now.
What do you mean? And he's like, I got it. Like, thank you. And so, I drove home, 5 hours home. A couple weeks later, I connect with him and he's been on campus like once or twice. So for the next year and a half, he went on campus once a week for a couple hours. And he was discipling a few students. I went back to join him once or twice, and he had some students he was discipling on campus. But I love it. Yeah. So it's so fruitful. It's like you can't go on campus and then spend 2 hours doing this and be like, well, that was a waste of time. That doesn't happen.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's do this. We'll start kind of winding it down here.
Yeah.
If people want to connect with you, other than our Elementum website, what are some ways that they could do that?
Yeah, you should email me and say, hey Steve, I watched the webinar, let's talk. And I want to do it. Yeah. Let's grab 10, 15 minutes on a phone or a Zoom call and let's talk.
Cool. So here's what we'll do is we'll put Steve's email in the comment section below. Also, we'll stick the link to the PDF. So if you want to grab that PDF, you can look through exactly, read a little bit more about Steve's process. And then I would encourage you, jump on a call with him, get 15, 20 minutes, just kind of he'll listen to your situation, kind of your context, and then, give you some practical next steps. So I think it's a great opportunity for a lot of you who are listening out there today. So any last things that you want to put out there, Steve?
Yeah, I guess just that one thing that's really hit me hard with COVID-19 is that, most of these campuses are still closed. And it's like, I never dreamed that would happen. But it's like, man, what a privilege when those campuses open up again. Like what a privilege that we can walk on campus and we can engage students and have an impact for the gospel. And so like, let's not let that opportunity pass us by.
Yeah.
So great opportunity to get ready for that when they open up again.
Awesome. Yeah. Critical days. Don't waste the days that you have now preparing for what God may want to do in the future. He's doing stuff right now, and we gotta lean into those things that he's doing. So once again, connect with Steve, get on a call with him. We'll post that in the comment section below. Steve, thanks for jumping on, taking a little bit of time on your Friday today. Love having you a part of our team. and great days ahead. Lots of fun stuff ahead. So thanks.
Yeah, amen. Thank you.
Awesome.